Hello guys, this is Pierre Noizat with me. He's the CEO of Blockchain.io, and I already introduced him in the previous video, so you should know him. We will talk in this video about the market and our lovely market, how the cryptocurrency market now dive down, and what could be a possible news, or what could be the circumstances which are moving the market. What do you believe?
Well, thanks, Marcel, for this question. we are asked often about that, and obviously, if we knew, like I said, we'd be even richer than we are, because we'd be able to predict the future, which is evidently not the case. So I'd say there are suspicions, for instance, that any news about Goldman Sachs moving into cryptos or launching their own futures could move the market and create an uptick in the exchange rate. And we've witnessed that many times before, but I wouldn't say that it's a determining factor, because there are so many other reasons for the market to move up or down, especially movements in Asia that we are not necessarily very much attuned to here in Europe, but there is a lot of money also invested in Asia, and a lot of interest in that part of the world. So that's why it's so difficult in a decentralized system, in a global currency like Bitcoin and a few others, to predict the market movements. And also we see speculation on some specific coins sometimes, and some of those look like market manipulation, to be honest. So my only recommendation to people asking me for investment advice is, first, I don't give investment advice, and two, study what you buy. Essentially, if you know what you are buying, then you are on the safe side. If you don't, you can only have regrets or remorse if something go bad. And obviously, if something go well, things go well, it's not an issue.
No.
And you don't need me.
Oh, of course not. When things go well, everybody is pretty happy. And then, for example, in January, where we had our lovely dive down, and yeah, I think now we are, like, I think we were in a downtrend. We could broke these, but I'm not 100% sure. For me, it's still not in the safety zone. What's your opinion?
No, I totally agree. It's still very emergent, very much experimental. All this is very experimental. That's why we see so much volatility. And for instance, there could be even seasonality in the fluctuation of the rates, because you have the tax period, and you have also Bitcoin is used also, or cryptos are used also as an edge with other assets. For instance, people in the stock markets have their own seasonality, and I think that has impact on cryptos as well. So all this is still very complex, and because the volumes are still very low, very small compared to other financial assets, that's why the movements are so big. But yeah, it's still very volatile, and Bitcoin is only getting less volatile these days, perhaps because of the futures contracts. But all the other cryptos are still very volatile, and I think we're going to see a lot of fluctuation still in the next few years.
Awesome. So, from my point of view, when I see the market and I see like that big candles, that big moves, when I go back a few years, I don't see that spiking candles. But I'm all the time speculating that there are some big funds who are moved. Is my point of view, because see the market, we were going down, and then boom, we shot through the roof.
Yes. And
then we started to go up again. So it looks to me like a bit like a manipulation. But what do you believe? Are the whales with big bags maybe moving market, or?
Yeah, I think there is so much information asymmetry these days between coins, the projects behind the coins and the tokens, and the investors. Because most investors are finance people; they are not necessarily cryptography experts or even computer science experts. So that's why there is so much information asymmetry, and that's why you see such big movements on some weird tokens or coins, and that creates a broader movement on cryptos. Because that drags up or down the other cryptos when one is going up or down. So again, that's so much at the experimental level yet that it's hard to predict the movements. And clearly, there are opportunistic investors that look for downturns in the market for as a buy opportunity, and they accumulate cryptos during the downturns, and then just sit and wait for the market to recover. Each time the market recovers and goes even further than the previous time. That's what we are witnessing. I think it's very reasonable to expect the price of a Bitcoin to go again 10 times what it is today. It's very possible. I'm not saying it's likely, I'm just saying it's possible. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, everything can be possible. What's your point of view about regulations? What do you think can it do to the market on impact?
I think the regulators and the bankers, because mostly regulators are linked to the banking industry. In fact, most of them have a banking background, and there is a system of revolving doors between banks and regulators. So I would say their strategy is to delay the adoption of cryptos. Essentially, they know it's unstoppable, or someone must have explained to them that it's unstoppable, like the internet, the web was unstoppable for the media industry. Just the same, the Bitcoin and cryptos are unstoppable for the banking and finance industry. So just trying delay tactics to retain their privileges for as long as they can. That's really what the name of the game is today. So they are putting all sorts of hurdles. Some regulations are reasonable, just like those that try to prevent money laundering, for instance. That's typically a reasonable regulation. But many others, regulations like caps on the amount of money you can invest with your bank account, or bank accounts that are typically frozen or closed for crypto investors. Those are unacceptable behaviors on the part of the banks and should be punished. If they are not punished today, like I said, it's because there is some form of collusion between regulators and the banking industry, but that won't last forever.
So yeah, I really also don't like it, and they have to be punished when they regulate or when they close bank accounts. Even some of my transactions were blocked, and but that's another topic. So from your point of view, it's not likely that regulations could move or crash the market when they, for example, say, okay, we block every transaction from a bank account to an exchange, for example.
Yeah, that would only be a boon to decentralized exchanges in this case, or local Bitcoins type of approach. So I think it will only drive illegal usage of the cryptos and just prevent honest people from using cryptos. And so obviously that's what regulators would want to do, but like I said, it can't last forever. You cannot just... the same applied, if you remember, maybe you're too young, but if you remember the cell phones went through the same phases where at first the telcos, traditional fixed line telcos would say, well, it's going to be used by terrorists or whatever, and or by only very few people, very specialized, like emergency doctors, etc. It doesn't make sense for very long. I mean, you can say that for a few years, but after a few years, it just looks silly. And I think that's really what's happening with cryptos. It's the same as with cell phones.
So pretty promising future for the crypto scene, and I mean, could be right. And from my point of view, regarding the regulations, I'm there always a bit skeptical. with how much power they will move into the regulations. Yeah, and for example, ICO, they could kill ICOs within the seconds. They could simply say, okay, only with investment accredited investment letters, like in the US, and then most the ICOs.
Absolutely. If Europeans were to do this, European regulators were to do this, they would shoot themselves in the foot, because really what ICOs do is enable French and European entrepreneurs, German entrepreneurs, Dutch entrepreneurs, to raise amounts of money that previously could only be raised in the Silicon Valley. That's exactly what ICOs are about. Is they are breaking the monopoly of the Silicon Valley over big first-round investment, Series A investments. Prior to ICOs, again, if you are not in the Silicon Valley, you are at a disadvantage for getting capital for your startup. That's the reality. So if Europeans or Asians were to regulate against ICOs, they would just shoot themselves in the foot and drag down their economy, where that's a golden opportunity for Europeans, Russians, Asians to catch up with the US for the digital economy. That's exactly what's happening with ICOs.
Last question, what is your thoughts about the impact and the influence of the Chinese, Japanese market participants on the global crypto market?
Oh, I think Asians are bullish about anything that has to do with these digital networks and any applications of also smartphones. They've been leading the way for many years now. So it's the same for cryptos. They're on top of it, and that's why it's so hard to predict from here what's going to happen. But all I can see is green signals everywhere, green lights everywhere, adoption growing every year. So we are perhaps today below 5% of the population, knowing or using cryptos. Until we reach 15%, we are still in the early adoption mode. So that's again 3 to 5 years of early adopters, and after 15% adoption, you get to mass market. So that's another 5 years. So from 10 years from now, I can predict we'll have mass adoption of cryptos. I am all certain of that, looking at the timetable, the time scale for previous innovations. So that's why I'm so bullish about Bitcoin and cryptos in general.
These numbers are based on your own research, or is it?
Yes, research of many people about the history of disruptive innovations. How long it took for these innovations to come to mass market adoption, and if you are looking at the numbers, Bitcoin and cryptos are very much in line with the past performance of disruptive innovations. Perhaps only faster. It's going even faster every time. So that's why I'm really bullish about the crypto space.
So in terms of we have in our mind the picture of the bubble pop. And the first, I think it's the smart money. So you say until 15%, we are still there where the smart money is, and mass adoption will be after 15%.
Yeah, 15% is typically the proportion of early adopters. We talk in marketing, when you talk about early adopters, you talk about the first 15% of the users. And we are still, like I said, under 5% now, so that's why. But yes, there is very much experiment. There are lots of experiments going on. For instance, Lightning Network, that's so much talked about today. It's still very much in R&D mode. There are still lots of improvements that are being built in or even designed almost as we speak about Lightning. For instance, multi-path payment for increased privacy on Lightning. And Lightning is just the first layer 2 protocol that's being implemented. There will be others. And other cryptos will also have their own layer 2 probably. So it's a fascinating time.
Cool. Thanks for sharing your opinion about these really interesting topics.
Thanks to you, Marcel, for having me.
Page where I post when I interview a blockchain expert, so you have the opportunity to ask them your questions. Bye bye, guys.